I think people will keep popping on, but we'll get going.
Great.
All right. Hi, everyone. We're here today for the Temp and Backup Care webinar through APNA. We have a really great group of panelists. Today we have with us Adriana Jalper from Joanna's Nannies, Erin Carol Manning from Gentle Giraffes, Brianna Edwards from On Call Nannies, and Lindsay Rose from Mom's Best Friend. And I think what we'll do is give each of you just a short time to introduce yourself. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the business you run or work for, your role in the business, and your experience with temp and backup care, and then we'll just go right into the questions that people have sent in to us. Adriana, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, I'm Adriana with Joanna's Nannies. I've been with the agency for about 3.5 years now as the scheduling coordinator. We specialize in temp and backup care as well as long-term through our membership program, but the majority is our temp and backup care services. And as scheduling coordinator, I schedule our nannies for all of those as well as handle client interactions.
Thank you. Erin?
Hi, I'm Erin. I own Gentle Giraffes Newborn Care. We are out of New England. We are a pregnancy and postpartum agency. We typically just do temp care for newborns, for postpartum doulas, just in the 4th trimester and during pregnancy. And I am the founder and CEO.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, Brianna?
I am the owner of On Call Nanny. I purchased On Call Nanny at the end of 2018. It has been in business. Mary created it in 2006. We service primarily backup care in the greater Seattle and San Francisco Bay areas. We do a small amount of placements, but the vast majority of what we do is backup care.
All right, and Lindsay?
Yeah, hi, I'm Lindsay Rose. I am the president of Mom's Best Friend. I've been with Mom's Best Friend for 8.5 years. And we're a full suite household staffing agency. Of course, we have a large temp division. We also do babysitting under the brand Vail Sitters in Vail, Colorado as well. And we also have a senior care division as well.
Great. All right, we've got a lot of experience here, so why don't we jump in? And I think for people who have been doing temp and backup care for a while, I think a lot of it comes second nature. For those of us who don't do as much of it, it can seem like a pretty big beast. It's pretty different, right, from long-term placements. There's a lot more different things that go into managing it, and especially managing your hiring and your staffing and insurance and finding your clients. So there's just so many different pieces. So what I'd love to start out with is just a brief overview. If one of you wants to hop in and just sort of give your definition of what the difference between temp is and backup care, and some of the things that you have to think about when you're thinking about one term in terms of the other.
So I'll go. I typically just do temp care since it's postpartum and pregnancy. So the difference between I would say temp and backup care is that we're kind of long-term when it comes to thinking of the 4th trimester, but we're not fully long-term like a full-blood, sorry, I can't even speak, but a full-grown nanny agency. But we don't do backup care. We don't, like, if a nanny's sick or if nanny's on vacation or a family comes in from out of town, we don't do that kind of stuff. So we kind of just stick to typically, 6 weeks to 4 to 5 months period working with the clients instead of kind of coming in, having somebody new every day or filling a different position every day.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Adriana.
Our agency does temporary and backup care. For us, temp care is any short terms. We define it as 3 months or less. So any short-term job, sometimes that's just a weekend job, sometimes it's their nanny's out of town, and sometimes they have a couple weeks that they're trying to gap care. And backup care is what we provide going through like Bright Horizons, Care at Work, or Life Care. So that's where it differentiates from us, is if it's being booked through another agency, or if it's like those same short-term needs but booked directly through us.
Lindsay, is it the same for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess there's three categories. We call them like family jobs, private families who work for us in terms of, date nights or one-off childcare experiences that they need booked. And then also we partner with Bright Horizons and of course are offered jobs and book backup care jobs through Bright Horizons. And then also we do work with private companies as well to offer them who are local in the Dallas and Fort Worth area to offer their particular small or medium-sized business specialized backup care for their employees. So those are kind of the three options that we, of course, offer in our temporary division.
Do any of you offer backup care through your company versus getting all of your backup care positions through a place like Care or Bright Horizons?
We do.
And how do you get those clients?
We network with corporations, our local area corporations. We find that you have to find the right size of company and the right demographic of company that's going to sign on with it. But we've had pretty great success with that. It's really those mid-sized companies in like the 2,500 employee mark. So, it's not going to be, we can't solo handle Microsoft and Amazon and Starbucks and things like that. But we can handle the medical, the smaller hospitals and things like that. We can handle those kind of things. And so we need somebody on the inside a little bit and network and that kind of thing. But for the most part, it's just getting the word out there.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've done to build our private backup care clients is just using our clients, our mom's best friend clients who come to us. I mean, most of them are working parents and have connections to their small or medium-sized businesses that can connect us with their HRs. And then that is sort of our foot in the door. So if that's an offering that you have already and don't know how to find more of those different businesses, I would send mass emails out, text messages out to your clients, and hopefully at least, a few of them will help you get connected with their company. At least that's what's worked for us in the past.
Yeah, that's great. Do you see a difference between your temp clients and your backup care clients? Do you make more money off of one versus the other? Is one more challenging?
Yeah, we have a higher rate with our temp clients than we do through the backup care companies. So we definitely make more off of that. And I would say our cancellation rate through backup care is higher. So like getting those jobs to be committed can be more difficult. But I would say like overall, as far as the jobs themselves, there's not much difference.
Yeah.
The clientele.
I think pre-COVID, we made more money on Bright Horizons backup care jobs, of course, when we were able to pay sitters less than we are now, but it's sort of kind of even now, right? But I think the main issue that we have is just that relationship building. When we have our private families, they've built relationships with us, they know us, they trust us, we've onboarded them into membership, we constantly are checking in with them. There are some restrictions in terms of the relationships we can build through backup care companies like Bright Horizons. So I think that's the difference, right? We just don't have as strong a relationship with those families as we do our private families. So it is harder. And, like Adriana said, I think is the cancellations are kind of enormous sometimes. And so our sitters sometimes don't want to commit to Bright Horizons jobs because they're afraid they're going to get canceled, but they feel more confident with the private family jobs. So it's definitely been difficult. I mean, I'm sure everyone that's on this call, temp has been difficult, since COVID, especially for us. And so we're just always trying to find our sweet spot, in terms of private families and backup care.
So I think for a lot of agencies, let's say they only do long-term placements, or they do a really small amount of temp care. For example, my agency, we do temp care mostly for families we've placed long-term already, or sometimes we do people who are traveling here for a weekend, things like that, but we don't do a lot else. It seems very overwhelming to start thinking, okay, I'm going to start a temp division. There's so many pieces to it. what are the first steps? How do you start to think about hiring nannies? Because I think a lot of smaller agencies or smaller temp programs don't hire their own nannies. So I'd love to hear some advantages to hiring them versus not hiring them, how you go about doing that, how you decide on what your rates are that you're going to charge and then also pay the nannies, and how do you keep a good flow of candidates coming through that you're able to hire so you have enough people for your jobs? I know that's like 10 questions in one.
And all of the $1 million questions, you know, the questions we're always asking ourselves every single day. Yeah. I can jump in and just say, I think probably a lot of us have, for us, I mean, I guess I'll tackle a couple of those questions and I'll try to remember them. But yeah, I mean, it's hard when you don't have a temporary division and you're starting a temporary division. Just recently, we've been through sort of a rebrand where we rebranded our temp division back to Mom's Best Friend. So I can speak a little bit into that. We decided to go away from the employment model and we just do the referral-based model. And that has definitely worked better for us here in the Dallas market. So I think my biggest advice is to, sort of weigh out the pros and cons of both options. A lot of our friends in the industry do the employment model and love it. And a lot of them do the referral-based model and love it too. So it really just depends on your comfortability level, how you want to structure your temp division, of course, and then also what your market can withstand. See what the other people in your market are doing and what's successful. And I really think from my experience in talking to agencies, it's sort of different, all nationwide and, what people do. So I think that's, and then in terms of pricing, we always set our goal margins. So like, what are we trying to make on every single booking? So in the employment model, we always said, hey, we need a $10 to $12 margin in order for this to be sustainable for us. And so when we book jobs, of course, when we have to pay someone $20 an hour, of course, we then make that $10 or $12 margin. So just, find your sweet spot, what makes your company, of course, operational and comfortable, and then back yourself into what your pricing is. I definitely missed some of those questions, so I'll pass.
Oh, that's great. But I do have a follow-up question is, what made you switch from the employment model to the referral model?
Yeah, I mean, so many things. I could probably do a whole webinar and just like talking about why we did that. The employment model was not working for us in our market. We were having to charge families an enormous amount to make our ends meet, and it just wasn't working for us. Again, lots of friends in the industry that it does work for. It was not working in our market. Our families were not receptive to it. Our families are a lot more receptive here in DFW to the referral-based model. And so we just knew it. We talked to our clients, we talked to our caregivers, we made a lot of calculated decisions based on the feedback that we had received. And luckily for us, we had been the referral model, then we went to the employment model. And so we knew both. And a lot of our clients knew both too. And so they could give us really good feedback.
I think we could do a whole webinar on this because I think that these are questions that almost every agency is asking themselves as they're starting to think about adding temp or backup care. I'd love to just go over some of the big ones, but I think there's a concern about liability. So how do you handle liability? And then is payment sort of like the same as a long-term placement where the family's paying you one fee and then pays the nanny directly? And how do you deal with nannies not getting paid or any issues that arise between the nanny and the family? Yeah.
Okay, so yes, and that is a good question as well. In terms of how people get paid, we actually love using, and some of you probably use it. We have an app that was white labeled to Mom's Best Friend. We highly recommend partnering with Sitter Pro. The Sitter Pro app has been wonderful for us. It handles all of our payment. So when the nanny leaves a job, she fills out, of course, her report for the day, and then it checks out the family on its own. So it's all automatic, and they have to have updated credit cards for us to even be able to load the job and book the job in the app. Now, of course, if, let's just say it was declined, then we have another form of payment when they sign contracts with us that we can use to gather that payment. Of course, not everything is perfect, but the app has been a beautiful thing for us. in terms of collecting payment, and our billing and payroll manager is not having to work as hard and not having to do every single little invoice every time. The app does everything for us. So I think you had some more questions.
Just about liability. Because I'm assuming when you're doing the employment model, you have insurance that is, the nanny is covered, you're covered.
Yeah, so in terms of liability, we actually, our insurance did switch over when we switched from the employment model. And remember, we actually still do the employment model for our backup care clients, or for Bright Horizon. So a good bit of our nannies are still on payroll every week who take backup care. So we still do that. Of course, that's a requirement working with Bright Horizon. So just know that as you get into it. So we still do that, but we also have insurance coverage. Alpha and Omega, Catherine, I know a lot of you have seen her at APNA and have connections with her. She has helped us get the right insurance for all liability coverage for doing the referral-based model. She also helped us when we had the employment model as well. So, definitely get a good insurance agent and make sure you're covered. But that referral-based model is actually easier, in my opinion, to get insurance coverage on than even the employment model, or in our experience it was.
So I just want to jump in on the insurance aspect of it, because I do, temp care for postpartum clients and stuff, and I deal with postpartum doulas and newborn care specialists and stuff. Here in Massachusetts, it's really important based on just the laws and stuff of how one is classified as an employee or an independent contractor. So for me at this point, although I had a conversation with my lawyer earlier today to possibly go the other route too, is everybody who works for me, they all have to have their own LLC. So they also have to be able to have their own liability insurance, and they have to come in with their own, all their own stuff too. But I also have that as well for my company. So it's almost like double. So they're protecting themselves, but we're also protecting them and General Drafts at the same time too. So it works out really well with that, especially when they're independent contractors. And their own LLCs too. So it's also helping them learn how to be their own business and what steps that they need to take. But at the end of the day too, because we deal with newborns, just having that extra liability, I can't tell you the amount of people I have educated and said it's really important because it protects you and your assets. Yes, I understand you might take five clients a year, but it only takes one client for them to, come back and not like how you did something. So it's really important to have all of that. So for us, it's kind of like double. We've got them who are protected, but we're also protected at the same time.
And that's a pretty big distinction between newborn care specialists and nannies with temp care. Is there's also the same model, right, Erin, where companies can hire directly their newborn care specialists, but a lot of them do what you're doing, which is referral based, but the newborn care specialist has to have their own insurance, LLC, which is important.
Especially especially in my state or our state, Laura, just because of the way that the laws are. But I believe there's a lot more states that are starting to go that route too.
Yeah.
I want to chime in a little bit on Washington just because it's a little bit different. One of the big reasons why we dropped the referral base and we went to strict employment was because in Washington state, while the tax department is like, no, you can refer and they're an independent employee, you are not the employer. Unemployment insurance, which is in Washington is unique. We are required to use what's called L&I here. We can't go to free market for insurance. We have to go through the state for it. So it's a little bit unique here, but they have very strict guidelines on who is the employer. And we had a situation where we had, and this was prior to me purchasing the company, and we found out after I purchased the company that there was a former nanny that we had referred. She was never an employee. She had never was on our payroll. I have no I-9 on her. There was no W-4 or W-2s on her. There's nothing for her. But we sent her to a family and she got injured on the job and needed x-rays, spiraled into, turns out she had lupus and she had all these other problems and it traveled a big thing. And even though she was only, working for us for a month, we were held accountable and she was never our employee, and all of that unemployment, the medical expenses became our responsibility. She was never my employee. This was before I purchased the company, and then I purchased the company and I was still held liable for it. And it wasn't even the same company because we purchased the assets and kept the trade name. So it's really state dependent, and it's really important that people understand those state laws, because you can really get bit hard.
Yes, especially if you're wanting to incorporate a couple of different states and place there as well. That was one of the questions I was talking to my lawyer about this morning too. So she's going to be looking into some of the other states, because we are starting to get a lot more inquiries, way more than I was expecting this early on in how long I've been doing this too. So I asked her to just start looking into the other states and what we need to do so that we are legally able to place people in those states so that we are protected.
And I think that is, such a major concern, because most of the time things go okay. But that one time that they don't go okay, and there's any confusion about who's the employer, whose insurance is covering something, that's where things can go bad pretty quickly. All right. Let's talk a little bit about recruitment. And I think let's start with Adriana. Why don't you tell us a little bit how you recruit, and then also after you're done, love to hear how recruitment of NCSs might be different than nannies, from Erin.
So our recruiting process, we have a dedicated recruiter, and she uses a couple of different websites. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head, honestly. And then I'm just getting over being sick, so sorry about that. But our recruiting process is quite extensive. So she does like an intro call, interview, and then like a pretty thorough background check. We have a set like questionnaire that we have them fill out when they set up their intro call with us, so that we already kind of have a background and know if it'll work out or not, like before we get to that intro call. And it's been pretty successful. Of course, with COVID, like there's just been a workforce shortage everywhere. We service the wine country area, and it's always been like our most like popular area with the most employees. And right now I think we have the least employees there. So we've definitely experienced that impact, but I would say overall, we've been pretty recruiting attempts as of late.
So for me, for doing NCS and postpartum doula work and representing my company, I may do it very differently than other companies. I have a vision of how I want my company to be represented and what we bring to the table. I want to bring highly knowledgeable and experienced people to homes because I really want to bring a service to them. I really want them to these families gain this knowledge, this information, have them enjoy their fourth trimester and really enjoy their baby. So for me personally, I've taken a ton of classes. I have been doing this for probably about 10 years. So there's a lot of experience behind there. I've worked for other companies as well. So what I do is that I have a pretty extensive application that they have to fill out, questions that I want them to know. Have they ever recruited to or guided a client to a chiropractor, or have they dealt with tongue ties, or have they dealt with other, certain things? And what is their knowledge based on that too? So yes, they fill that out. They talk to my assistant, but at the end of the day, they have to actually pass my test. It's not really a test. It's just like talking to me, because I want to make sure that they have the knowledge that at least that I have, if not more knowledge than I have, because of what I want to bring to the table to these clients. I don't want to be the type of client that or agency that is just going to put somebody in a job just so that there's somebody taking care of the baby at night. There's wonderful companies who do that, but that's just not the model that I want. I really want to bring a service to these families, and I really want them to get over the hump of, some of these babies are really challenging at times. I mean, I've spent 9-10 hours a night literally holding a baby for like 6-8 weeks at a time because we're trying to troubleshoot what's going on, and it can be really hard for the parents. And I want somebody in that home that's able to do that and troubleshoot and work with those clients. And I don't want to really change anybody who's going into those homes. I really want the same person, if not like 2 people in the home. So I believe I do it differently than most other agencies, just because of the vision that I want and the quality of care that I want to bring into homes.
Great, thank you. Brianna, tell me about how many new people you're constantly needing to bring on, how much attrition you have,
Yeah.
if there's certain seasons that you struggle more, or if you use different, I know you're, starting your long-term department now, so like, is it a different type of candidate that you're seeing? Because I think it can be challenging to know where to find these, right?
Very, very different candidates. I would love to be able to hire all of these placement candidates for our backup team. That would be amazing. We just don't know how we could pay them $38 an hour plus benefits. I don't know how we could make that happen. That'd be awesome. I'd love that. We kind of have a mantra that we're always recruiting, always be recruiting. We are constantly hiring backup care. It is just part of our flow of business. We are routinely running ads and things like that. The caliber of nanny that we get for backup care, one of the things we hold ourselves to is we have really high standards of the caliber of nanny. So what that means is we have these high standards, but backup care can't float the margins that placements has, right? Like the expense just can't, the labor cost can't be there. So you need to find people that are transient, people that are in transition, people that are backfilling hours. And that means there's some dances you have to do with that, because you're not going to find the nanny who wants to be a full-time nanny making full-time hours and full-time wages is not going to be wanting to do backup care. They're going to want a single family making a lot more money with all the benefits and that kind of thing. So you have to tailor a little bit to the market of we're recruiting a ton of part-time. And we thought for a while, we're like, we really just need to get several more full-timers in here. We can just get some full-timers. That would make a big difference. But it's such a niche. We have a handful, and that's great. And we love them and we cherish them. But that's not the bulk of the candidates we get. If we want to hold that high caliber, a standard, we have to adjust somewhere else. And that is their availability and their flexibility. But conveniently, we're able to do that. So it works out for us because we do so much backup care. They can backfill their hours really, really well. But once we started interviewing candidates for placements, I got all kinds of gushy. I was like, oh my gosh, can we just hire all of them for backup care? That'd be amazing. Be nice. Someday. Yeah.
So Lindsay, sort of similarly, I assume you're constantly hiring and
always hiring. Yeah, our funnel is always open. I mean, I think that is the best way to just think about is if you're operating a temp division. I mean, our recruiter has a goal of always having, 10 to 15 in the funnel all the time, always bringing them on. I will say here, we actually work a lot of our perm candidates. Now it is, of course, less money. We just sell it a little bit different. I mean, it's supplemental income for them. And our goal is to get you working as fast as we can for our company. So while you're interviewing with perm families, why don't you work 20 to 30 hours a week for us? So we're referral-based model. So it's easy to do that. We're not having to put them on payroll most of the time, but they're picking up a lot of jobs. They're picking up a lot of church jobs, special events. And then of course, just your typical date nights and one-off childcare experiences when they don't work on Fridays with their regular family and they're wanting some extra income. We've seen that more now. We've actually onboarded 17 this month perm candidates into temp because of gas prices and things like that. Like they need to make that extra money because their families aren't paying them anymore. They're already like at the top of their budgets already. And so they're supplementing some of those gas costs with date nights and, one-off temp jobs. So I will say, try. It's again, the cost. I mean, they can make $30 an hour as opposed to $20 an hour in temp, but we sell it a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, funnel's always open. We're always hiring and accepting applications. So.
Adriana, I think since you're doing employment model, tell me what, if any, benefits you're offering to your candidates.
So we don't have any benefits for them, like in the form of medical or anything like that. We do offer sick pay to our nannies, and then just a benefit not technically a benefit, but our nannies view it as it is, they do, so we have our membership program, which is our version of placement. They're still employed through the agency, they're just working for that one family. But when their families go out of town or they cancel shifts, they're able to be booked on backup care or temp shifts through the agency. So they still are having those, they're not having that lapse in hours usually. We also, with working with Care at Work, we've been able to offer guaranteed hours in select locations just because Care at Work has been offering that to us. So while we don't necessarily have like, this is your set hours every week, some locations we are able to offer that to our nannies.
Great. Brianna, do you offer any benefits to your nannies?
All the state required stuff, that's the big one. And then we do tuition reimbursement, and we do the biggest benefit, and this is the one that we hear from our applicants and employees all the time, is that we allow them to pick and choose their own schedule. We don't automatically book the nannies, which would be great. I'll be 100% honest. It would make life a lot easier on the admin side. It'd be wonderful, but overwhelmingly, they don't want that. They've made it very clear to us they don't want that. We've tried it so many times. They don't want it. They don't apply by it. They don't work with that. So we have finally just conceded this is what they want, and we will support that, and they love it. So that's one of the biggest draws that we get.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about working with Care and Bright Horizons or any other backup care companies that you guys work with. Love to hear your experience with how you got signed up with them, what you had to do to get signed up with them, how the system works, if you're required to do a minimum amount, how you accept jobs, et cetera, all that stuff.
I can wax poetic on this one for a long time.
No, do it.
So we, On-Call Nanny, prior to the purchase of our company, when I purchased it, On-Call Nanny brought backup care to the Seattle area by partnering with Bright Horizons. So On-Call Nanny was already doing it, and then Bright Horizons wanted to get involved, and so On-Call Nanny brought it here. So that's how that relationship started there. And at the time, they were preferred providers for many, many, many years. And in 2016, I think is when it happened, Bright Horizons started purchasing, was it college nannies and tutors and that kind of stuff? And that changed the dynamic of the relationship in a huge way. And that meant that no longer they said we were preferred providers, but the jobs just did not come in the same way. And the way they have their system set up is, if you think of like a funnel or a hopper, if you will, job comes in and all the agencies kind of bid for this job, and they all kind of go for the job, and then everybody gets in line, and they have a certain amount of time or exclusivity window to staff that job. Mm-hmm. And then if they can't do it in that certain amount of time, it goes to the next agency and kind of goes round. After Bright Horizons changed their model without really letting us know how that went, we saw big dips in the jobs that came in, the consistency of the jobs that came in, the caliber of jobs that came in. And it took us a while to come around, but we finally made the decision to drop the preferred provider relationship and switch over to, not switch, but bring on Care at Work. And that was a phenomenal decision. That saved our agency in a major, major way. When the pandemic hit and everything dropped for Bright Horizons, Care at Work was still going pretty strong because they partnered with different businesses. So it worked out really well for us that way.
Can you just explain for those who don't know what that means, preferred provider versus Care at Work?
Right. Yeah. So being a preferred provider with Bright Horizons means that you are contracting with them as a sole, that you are swearing that you will not be using any other network. You will not be partnering with any other network. And currently, Bright Horizons and Care at Work are the two largest networks, and Bright Horizons has a lot of years on Care. Like they've been doing it for a lot longer, and they have a much larger base. However, Care has the online platform that they've really been trying to transition over to and secure some new clients. And they've been having some pretty good wars with their client shopping, but Care at Work doesn't have that same requirement. They don't require that an agency use them exclusively. Only Bright Horizons does. So, and when you leave that relationship with Bright Horizons, they want to tell you, you can't partner with anybody for a year. But what is in the fine print, and it's state by state, is in order to do that, you have to be making above a certain amount of money. So depending on what your income is, your gross revenue from that relationship will determine whether or not they can hold you accountable for severing the relationship and partnering with another agency or another network. Does that clarify a little bit?
Yes. And so let's go back to this funnel thing.
Yeah.
So you say, yes, I think I can fill this job.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're not requiring your nannies to have a certain schedule. So you can't just say, oh, I know I have so and so available. You have to put it out there to your nannies.
Right.
What system do you use to get that job posted to all your nannies? And then how do you choose the person who is going to
Yeah. So we used to have our own custom software, and it was great. And it worked really, really well for what it was. It spent too long not getting updates, to the point where it became a huge hindrance for us. So we switched over to Sitter Pro, and we have been pretty pleased with it for the most part. There are some limitations because we don't automatically book. Sitter Pro doesn't have the ability to have a limbo period on the job is ours, but not really ours yet kind of thing. So we have some workarounds for that, and we're able to make it happen. We send it out to all the nannies that are qualified for that job, that have it marked in their availability as time that they can do it or location they can do it. And it's essentially first come, first serve on whoever takes it first. If there's a special request or something along those lines, then we narrow it down and we'll send it out. And it goes from there. And once the nanny responds saying, hey, this is mine, then we'll go back and we'll make sure we secure the job with Bright Horizons or Care Work.
Is that similar, Lindsay and Adriana? Is that similar to how you do it?
That is very similar to how we do it. Of course, we use a Sitter Pro app too. So we put all of our Bright Horizons jobs in there, staff them with our nannies, and then have to go back into the Bright Horizons portal and book the nanny there. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely some workarounds. You're going to have to get your processes. I mean, we also still send emails, hey, or group text messages. Hey, we just sent a few jobs out. Make sure you're checking your app to accept those positions. You know, of course, if they have their notifications on, that's easier. But yeah, very, simple. In Dallas and Fort Worth, there's a round robin for Bright Horizons. So you have an exclusivity window. And the great thing about Bright Horizons is that, especially if you're starting out, you've got work that is handed to you every day and your job is to staff it. And so, there's a lot of feelings in terms of working with Bright Horizons and Care at Work and all those things, that I've got all the feelings too. But it is really good for, people when they start out. Of course, for us, we used to be college sitters. So we were a part of that move over, and now we've decided to rebrand back to Mom's Best Friend. And so, but we still have a contract with Bright Horizons, and I would, my biggest piece of advice is when you go to the table and you make agreements with Bright Horizons, just read every fine print, know exactly what you're agreeing to, and feel really good and comfortable about that. I guess it's my.
Can you negotiate with them, or is it sort of pretty strict about what they say is what you have to accept?
They do allow negotiation. I don't know. I think it's very hard to win a lot of those negotiations, especially when you have college sitters in the ring. I mean, they own college sitters. So if you have other college sitters in your area, of course, they have priority because of the ownership type of situation that is with Bright Horizons. So just know that getting into it. And again, we've learned a lot over the past 5 years. And so there is negotiation, but I mean, your bill rate is probably going to be very similar, if not lower, than college sitters in your market.
Okay. Technology-wise, it sounds like it's pretty impossible to do it without some sort of system to contact the nannies. And I think that can be pretty overwhelming for people. I know, Brianna, you had something and you switched. Lindsay, I don't know if you've been working with Sitter Pro for a while. And Adriana, do you have your own system?
Yeah, so we use a system called When I Work, and the nannies are able to go in there and put their availability in. We require that our nannies have their availability for the whole month put in there. They are able, if like they have a doctor's appointment or something come up and they're not scheduled, they're able to go in and mark themselves as unavailable, but we auto book from there. So if we get a job and it matches their availability. We book them to it and they get a notification to their phone. And then we'll usually text as well, just to let them know that we've booked them on something. And it's worked really well for us. As long as I've been with the agency, that's the system we've used. For jobs that are like a little further out, like under our temp care, not necessarily Bright Horizons, we're able to put it as an open shift and they can take it on a first come, first serve basis. But generally we stick to just the auto booking for them.
We actually, I think, like I said, when I first introduced myself, we have Vail sitters in Vail, Colorado, and we use Engine Hire for Vail sitters. And then we use the Sitter Pro for our DFW temp division. So it's been really interesting over the past, I guess, 6 to 8 months to see the differences in both. We like both, really. I mean, we love working with all of the people, of course, at Engine Hire and Sitter Pro. They both offer sort of different. One is like a CRM and one is an app, sort of. I'm like, I wish it was like they were married, like you can kind of have both, which I hear is on the horizons for both companies. So I would definitely bet both companies. A lot of them, I mean, they're just great. In fact, we just wish we can merge them both for sure. And we've had good experiences, but I would highly suggest the app, of course. And Engine Hire has been great for Vail, which is a mountain town, which when those families come in, they don't want to download an app. They just want one-off childcare. So that works better there.
Okay, great. So with temp, and I think particularly with backup care, it's a numbers game, right? Like you have to have high volume to be making any money. So did it take any of you a while to get to the point where it was profitable? How long did it take? And how do you generate the income or the revenue stream, the jobs that you need? And also, how many people do you have to employ to keep in your office to keep the business going?
I can touch on this briefly. I wish I had more data from prior to our ownership, because purchasing it at the end of 18, then we had 19, and then pandemic hit, right? So our data is, yeah, right. But I would say, when we're running lean, we're running, maybe 2 additional admin. When we're running really lean, when things are going well, I typically have 5 or 6. I have typically 3 to 4 scheduling coordinators, and I have a recruiter, I have an executive assistant. And right now we have our placements director, which is great. So it really, like you said, it's a numbers game. It's about getting them. The good news is, even during the pandemic, it's never been about lack of jobs. We turn down dozens and dozens of jobs a day. So that's never the problem. It's the staffing, right? And it's getting the caliber of staffing in that is that you want to represent your brand and your company and serve your family and your families and your clients. And it's the caliber that's not gonna jump ship in 2 months. So it's how long before it's profitable? I mean, we've been doing it since 2006. So say a long time ago.
we have for the nanny side of things, we have 3 people here who have been doing this for a long time, right? So it's a much different situation when you have yourself established. And
yeah.
I mean, and Erin, obviously, so it feels like NCS is a sort of like a much different beast,
Mm-hmm.
but you've been working in the industry for a long time, but your company is just 3 or 4 years old now at this point?
Well, technically it's almost 5.
Oh,
however, legally 5. But really expanding, I always knew that 2020 is when I would really work on the back end. So it's really only been 2.5 years that I've been actually really working on the back end. Before, I wanted to make sure that I had a solid foundation of what it was like to work in the field and with different clients and stuff, so that I could navigate that with the people that worked with me and for me, and also knew how to navigate the clients too, and what clients do I want.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I am on a smaller scale. It may not look like that, but in the back end, we're on a smaller scale. I do have an assistant that if I didn't have her, I don't know what I would do. I would, she's a godsend to me in so many ways. And it also frees up me to be able to do a lot of things that I want to do, but also create more avenues for revenue, figure out where I want to go, what do I want to do long-term with the company and stuff too. But for me, yeah, it's literally myself and my assistant. Plus I've got, a social media person, and I've got, a website person. So next is most likely going to be growing to get a recruiter in too. But it's also where do I need to go when I need to go? And I'm extremely intuitive, and that's what I usually follow. So at this point, it's not right, even though I do turn down a lot of jobs. But I also just feel the way that the market is right now for NCSs and postpartum doulas, most of them want to be a one-person show, and we have to get them back to understanding how great it is to work for an agency too, and one that values what they bring to the table and really help them make this a long-term career for them as well.
So just like, I think more backup care, because I think a lot of agencies do temp, right? Like it's not so complicated to say, okay, well, someone called me, they need a babysitter for a day or weekend, whatever, I can find a permanent nanny who has some availability, right? In bulk, it becomes much harder, but it's really the backup care that seems overwhelming to people. Similarly, I think that NCS work can feel overwhelming to get into, because it's just not the same. It's a different skill set. It's a different way of booking. They're working overnight. They're working for temporary amounts of time, not a year, 2 years, 3 years. And some families may want 24/7 care. So what do that's like, well, how do I find someone who can do 24/7, or how can I find people to pair? There's just so many factors that go into it, I think, that maybe stop people from moving forward with placing NCSs. So can you give some advice to people who might want to start thinking about it, and how to get that information and learn that information so they're doing it correctly?
I personally think that if you want to go do it, go take an NCS class. So you actually have the knowledge of what these people are being taught, or take every training program that's out there, just so that you know. I also think that it's really, the one thing that I find very challenging is when you have a newly trained NCS that wants to come in and they want to make top dollar, because that's what they're told in their training program. And they think, well, because I've got 20 years of childcare behind my belt, there's a huge difference between being a nanny and being an NCS, especially with what I want to bring to the table for my clients. So yes, I agree that you can come in and you can work on your own and you can make that top dollar with families or what have you. But at the end of the day, for me, I want that quality care. I want you to have that knowledge. I want that. So it is knowing, for me personally, knowing what is the great information that is out there. I'm constantly learning. I'm still taking classes so that I know. It's not even so much that I can bring it to my personal clients. It's so that I can also bring it to my team and help them when they come to me with a challenge. I can go, okay, well, let's work this out and see what's going on. And have you talked to the family about this? So I think that it's really understanding what the NCS industry is like, and also knowing that I'm a huge proponent that the client is not always right, and really backing up the NCSs, especially if they're doing 24s. I've pulled somebody out within the first 2 weeks of a 6-month contract because of the stuff that the mother was emailing me, and I was like, that just doesn't sound right, and I had to do some investigating on it. And I've done that multiple times. I've terminated contracts with 9 hours left because I personally have been left out in the rain. Certain things like that. So I really think that if you're going to do it, you really have to have a full understanding of what the industry is like and working for these clients and stuff too. I have a pretty strong personality, so I can handle a lot of things. And I've been known to say to clients certain things that most people may not, or just think that, ooh, that might not have been professional enough. But at the end of the day, I'm also who I am, and I have a reputation for people saying that I bring quality into their home too. And that's what I want at the end of the day. And I want my people who work for me to know that I've got their backs, but I also want my clients to know that I've got their backs too when it's important.
So when you're paid, are you on a percentage model? How do you manage that?
So no, we're on an hourly. We're in like an hourly model at this point too. So Yes, I charge the client an hourly fee, and then I pay the NCS as an hourly fee. However, I've been known to, as company wise, make extremely a small amount off of somebody because they bring an extremely valuable knowledge and experience to the table, and I'd rather put that person in the job than have my company make a lot of money.
So you have a flat rate for every family, and then each NCS might have a different rate.
Correct. But we also have packages. So I have like an a la carte rate that's a little bit more than I would with our packages. Because again, I want that long-term NCS client. I don't want the one person who just needs the respite care. I don't want that. So I do make it, an incentive for people to sign up for longer packages with us. But at the same time, I've also been building. So a lot of people tell me I need to raise my rates. I need to do this. I need to do that. Sure. But at the same time, I want to make sure that my name is out there and people know it before I bring in, a higher rate. That probably represents more what we bring to the table.
Okay, great. Thank you. We are getting close to the end, so I want to try to get in as many questions as we can for people. We have such a long list. A lot of people are interested in hearing about keeping your temp nannies safe in a home if there's uncomfortable situations, and then also if they're like in a really messy home that they're not comfortable being in. And with COVID, with masking, not masking, vaccines, there's just so many factors right now. So what do any of you have regulations around how you handle these situations? Would love to hear about that. So
I will just come in and say that I do kind of like whatever the client wants to do, because every client is different. They all have something, their own vision of what they think is safe compared to another family and what have you. So I just ask them, what would you like us to do? And if the NCS or the postpartum doula is willing to do that, great. If not, then great. I mean, I have a girl who has lung issues and a autoimmune disease, and she can't do a mask. But she takes a test at least 3 times a week. She does other things. She's willing to walk into a home and take a test. I have other ones that are like, I'm not going to do that. I have other clients where I've just spoken to them. I mean, I went 2.5 years without COVID, and then I ended up getting it from a client because we were traveling and still to this day, they don't require me to walk in with a mask whenever I show up. I don't require them. It's, but every family's different, and I just go on what the family wants, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that they feel comfortable, and I can't say what every family's going to feel comfortable with.
Lindsay, what about you? What are your policies?
Yeah, so we are the same. I mean, we definitely have families. Of course, we live in Texas, so it's very like 50-50. It's down the middle. You've got, families who want these things and families who just don't care. So we allow the families to tell us, hey, I would like to hire a vaccinated nanny, and give us the stipulations on what that looks like. And when we put out the job, it has those details. So of course, and one of the great things about the Sitter Pro app, it allows you to indicate those things. So a nanny can, when she's setting up her profile, say, I am vaccinated. So if that's a requirement of the family, that job isn't going to go to the unvaccinated nannies. So that is a beautiful thing. And then of course the masking, we don't get that question a whole lot, but we have had, families who want their nannies vaccinated and masked. Of course, that job will go out. It's very hard to find a nanny that will do that for, 8 to 12-hour shifts, but hey, we always somehow find somebody that will do it for even one day for a family. So we don't have certain rules. We allow the families to, kind of dictate that, and we put it on the job, and then nannies can take the jobs as they please. That's one of the great things, is they are in charge of the jobs that they take. So.
And what about uncomfortable situations? Maybe they text you once they've gotten to a job, or went one day and we're supposed to go back the next day, but don't feel comfortable. Like Brianna, do you want to talk
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, one of the big things that we tout on our end is we are very much on the nanny side. And we have to, because they're the commodity, right? Like they are the reason why we have work. So why we have a company, I should say. All of our nannies are masked all the time in both states. And if ever they feel even remotely unsafe, we get them out of there, and we will not serve a client that is not overwhelmingly praiseworthy of our nannies. Like, our nannies have to love the family, or the family gets fired. we've let a lot of families go. If they're not going to be wonderful with our nannies, then we don't have time for that. Sounds pretty aggressive, but our nannies appreciate it and we take care of them. And the families that we keep are worth it. Like they're great and the nannies love it and it works out really well for us.
So I've been on a job with one of my other team members too. And so I knew this family. And she's not as strong as I am. And when it comes to just speaking up for herself and what have you. But anyway, she was at the house and she emailed or texted me and said that the dad just yelled at me. So I texted the dad and I was like, please don't yell at my team member. That's just not appropriate. And so obviously if I had never been in the home, I might've taken a different, approach, but I knew this father, I knew how he could be and stuff too. So again, it really comes down to knowing, the clients, but also again, as Brianna said, protecting the people in the job, your nannies or your NCSs or postpartum doulas, because at the end of the day, they are your bread and butter. They, if you don't have them, you don't have, a company.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we have 1 minute left. It's quite obvious that we could talk about this for like 4 or 5 hours and still not answer everyone's question. I think we'll talk about doing another panel like this to get to some of the other questions that we've missed. But what I would love from each of you is just like 3 or 4 sentences. If you could tell someone one thing, if they're about to start Temp or NCS or backup care, like one thing that you think is the most important thing for them to know, or something that would be helpful for them to know.
Make sure you love it. Make sure you really love it to be able to get into it, because there's a lot of stuff that can come with it. And so if you don't love what you're doing, those hard times are going to be even like harder for you.
Good advice.
I would say really get to know and cherish your nannies. You need them.
I think one of the things that we've been talking a lot about is like, what do we do? Like, we have a lot of requests from families. So when you're starting off, like decide that you're just going to do date nights and like that is your thing and you are going to get really good at that, or just doing backup care and you're going to do really good at that. And then throughout your time, add to that and keep growing that way. But that would probably be my biggest piece of advice.
I think that's really sort of key, because like throughout all of this, it is very overwhelming to start thinking about how to do this. And if you can focus on one piece of it, it makes it a lot more manageable at the beginning, right?
Yes.
What about you, Adriana?
I'm gonna say something similar to Lindsay. So I guess on top of that, also just like making sure that you're providing that 5-star service to your clients and your nannies alike. Make your name memorable to your clients. Make sure that they want to come back to you, but also make sure you're providing the same to your nanny so they want to stay with you.
Well, thank you very much. This has been really informative. And like I said, we're going to have to get back on with you all at some point and answer I don't know, I think I still have like 30 questions that we didn't get to. So we'll have to do another one. If anyone does have any questions, you feel free to reach out and we'll try to get you some answers. And hopefully we'll see you again. We have our next webinar coming up on August 25th. And this webinar was recorded and it should be emailed out to everyone who signed up within the next 5 days. So thank you, everyone. And everyone stay cool out there and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.